All right, gang, Royd Free Senior back. Today I'm going to cover a J C Grimek article from a 62 Strength and Health magazine entitled Should You Train Heavy? I'm going to just go right into it. Subject I've selected to discuss this month is certain to prove controversial among lifters and bodybuilders alike, especially the latter group. Question of how heavy to train has always proved perplexing to bodybuilders, particularly to beginners. The question of whether to train heavy or light has always been the subject of much discussion and debate among barbell men for as long as progressive weight training has been known, and yet no one has come up with a simple solution to end the confusion, at least not to the satisfaction of everyone. This problem, how heavy to train, is individual and usually depends on what one hopes to accomplish by his training. If the trainee seeks to improve his general musculature and physical efficiency, which is usually the case, then regular barbell training with medium-heavy resistance would do much to help him achieve his objective. Conversely, if he entertains greater ambition and wants to carve for himself a niche in the weightlifting Hall of Fame, he must be willing to train heavy, much heavier than he would if training for mere physical fitness. So it's obvious that this problem is individual and the decision rests on the ultimate goal one hopes to attain. It's also true that when light training is followed for conditioning, an occasional heavy workout should be included to keep the strength of the muscles at a high peak. Moreover, heavy training tends to stimulate the lesser used fibers and thus encourages fuller and better muscle contours. Lighter weights, on the other hand, can work the muscles very efficiently, but only when the exercises are performed correctly. Medium or light resistance should be employed for increasing speed and to perfect lifting form. In this regard, light training is certainly not to be overlooked if one hopes to excel at lifting. And where greater power is desired, the overload and power plus principles outlined in New York Advanced Methods are practical for this purpose. However, in keeping with development of greater power, the newly devised isometric isotonic method of power training that was recently revealed in this magazine simplifies this approach and makes it possible for many to get increased strength. In defense of heavy training, let us use some of the champion lifters as examples. These champions, we all know, must train heavy most of the time so their muscular power remains at a peak. However, even these men occasionally employ a light training day that helps to keep their muscular coordination keen, their lifting speed swift, and their lifting form perfect. But heavy training is employed chiefly to keep the muscles strong as they are capable, so they are capable of handling heavy weights without any difficulty, which is what makes a champion. At this point, it might be proper to mention that if a lifter lacks good lifting style, his poundage is sure to suffer, and under the circumstances, he should use less weight to perfect his form. Using heavy weights does not help to improve your lifting style. If anything, it makes it worse because one is apt to depend on actual muscle strength instead of muscle coordination and speed to overcome the gravity of the weight. Using lighter resistance and practicing lifting does not impede body speed and results in better lifting style. Most lifters follow this type of training, heavy weights to keep their muscles toned up for greater power, and lighter training to add more speed to their movements and improve their lifting form. Recently, I received a letter along this line from a 46-year-old man who wanted to know how he could acquire more strength in his squatting exercise. His best performance was 260, but this he has managed only on a few occasions. Now, he has made several reps with 250 on numerous occasions, but when he attempted 265, he was unable to recover. He also admits that there are times when 250 feels very light, and he's capable of doing high repetitions, but there are days when even 240 proves to be a challenge. He squats, excuse me while I turn the page. He squats about twice a week and has been training for 5 years and has failed to make any improvements with his squatting in over a year. How can he increase his poundage? He asks. Problem as I see it is not unusual. Almost anyone who has trained for any length of time has had days when the weights feel unusually light and other times they feel extra heavy. This is natural and usually reflects the mood you're in. For example, if you're genuinely enthusiastic and anxious to train, the weights usually feel lighter at those times. But when you lack ambition and the desire to train, the weights will feel very heavy. So when this man writes that he can do several reps with 250 and then he fails to do one rep with 265, this would indicate his lack of confidence in his ability. I'm inclined to think that he has a mental block, which prevents him from exerting his full strength when he attempts the 265. If he had complete confidence in himself, he would be capable of putting out more effort when he needed it and thus would succeed with the weight easily. In order to acquire this confidence, he must first overcome his fear of the weight. To do this, he should practice quarter or half squats using a much heavier weight than he can squat fully with. This will build his confidence, and at the same time, his legs, knees, and hips will get stronger from the movement, especially if heavy weights are employed. Of course, it's not difficult for any man to do quarter or half squats with 400 or 500 pounds if he is capable of doing complete movement with 260. And as a matter of fact, anytime you support or handle a heavy weight for a few reps and then reduce the weight to about half, which may still be your limit, you'll find this weight incredibly light. I know, I used the same technique in my early training, and in fact, whenever I failed to clean a weight that was near my limit, I never grew discouraged but quickly loaded the bar to a heavy poundage and did a few deadlifts with it. Then I unloaded the bar to the previous weight that I had failed to clean, and lo and behold, the weight would almost fly up. It's because the muscles were taxed by a much heavier load, so were geared up to exert greater force. Reducing the weight made those same muscles ready to exert just as much effort as before, but because the weight was reduced, the weight felt lighter. Of course, bear in mind that you do only a few reps to sort of condition the muscles to that effort. If you continue to do a lot of reps and sets, you probably won't even get the weight off the floor. You'll be too tired. But a few fast reps and then return to the weight you failed with before will make a big difference. Getting back to the lifter, we all know that he must train regularly to stay ahead of his competitors or be overtaken. But the fellow who seeks only to improve or maintain his physical condition doesn't have to fight competition, consequently doesn't have a real purpose to use heavy weights all the time as a competitive lifter. For one thing, he may develop a fixation in his mind that he will never handle certain poundages, and this may often put a damper on his efforts so he's unable to exert his full force. The 46-year-old man mentioned earlier may never surpass his 260 unless he assumes a more positive mental approach by including the half squats mentioned before or by employing perhaps a heavy straddle lift. This heavy training will help him lose his fear of certain weights, and because he'll be handling much heavier weights in the half squat, he might attempt and even succeed with 300 in squat. It's possible once he establishes confidence in himself, but older men are more prone to injury than younger men, so he should spend some time in thoroughly warming up their muscles before attempting a limit lift.